Welcome to Tack Talk. I'm your host, Nadira Nazir. Imagine getting hit by a car while you're out on your daily jogging and get flipped in the air. That is what happened to my guest, Rosa Rago, at the age of 22, while attending Central Michigan University on a full soccer scholarship. The accident nearly killed her. This horrifying moment eventually became the greatest blessing in her life, and the very reason why she's here today. Her traumatic experience led her on a path of self-healing, self-discovery, self-mastery. It's a life filled with an abundance of love, joy, peace, and happiness. Rosa is grateful to wake up every morning to live her purpose of serving others, and she wants nothing more than to share her journey so that you too can rise to your true calling. Rosa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Wow, what a story. At the age of 22, you got flipped by a car. So tell us what happened on that day.
Well, what happened on that day was that I actually decided just to go for a quick little jog, and that's exactly what happened. Is I got hit by a car, and you know, it's interesting because the way it happened, within 2 years, I actually got into 4 serious car accidents. And the last 2, I was hit as a pedestrian, and I was completely innocent in the situation. So it's interesting when, you know, things need to get really, really loud before you kind of awaken and get the point and recognize that there's something that you're being told. And but basically, I actually decided to skip class. I was in university. I was a straight A student. I graduated with honors, but I decided to skip that day, and I went for a quick jog. And before I got home, I ended up seeing my roommate across the street, and she had locked the door, so I had to actually cross the street to get the key. But I had actually already arrived home, and that's when I went. I just remember last minute her calling out my name. And before she can even get my whole name out, I was struck by a car. I flew up in the air. I remember feeling like a dummy in the air. And I remember feeling an out-of-body experience. I didn't feel any pain. I landed on the ground, and I was on the ground for 45 minutes before the ambulance came. I had to have my roommate at the time direct traffic. And I remember laying there on the ground and just thinking to myself, oh my gosh, like I just got hit by a car. I couldn't believe it. And for whatever reason why, I was able to rationally, you know, compose myself, and I just knew that the last thing I needed to do was stress out. My heart, you know, the physiological demands of my body already was probably already working to healing me, and so I knew I had to stay calm.
So let me ask you this, did time slow down as you were flipped in the air and you land? Did you feel like it's slow motion?
I definitely did, because I experienced the whole, you know, my whole experience in the air. I remember doing a complete flip. I remember just feeling like a dummy, and I remember feeling my eyes rolling in the back of my head. And the crazy thing is I remember landing, and it was like a soft landing. I don't remember the pain, the impact, or anything like that. And I didn't actually really experience the hit and the impact until a couple hours after I left the hospital. And so, and it wasn't until the ambulance came, I had no idea if I was going to die in the next 5 minutes from a heart attack. I didn't know if I was paralyzed. I laid there, all I could think about was just to be as calm as possible, and not wanting to know what, you know, the reality of the situation was. And you know, it wasn't until that they came and they just checked my body, they scanned my whole body, and the first thing that they grabbed was my arm, and it killed. It was, you know, obviously in a lot of pain, so I already knew, okay, there's one bone that's broken. But I really had no idea what I looked like. I had no idea how bad it was. I was you know, just, it was a very odd
Was it
experience.
an out-of-body experience as you're laying there and waiting? And that 45 minutes must have seemed a very long time.
You know, it's interesting that you asked me that question, because sometimes I feel like I'm still out of body. And that has a lot to do with the experience and where I am today, actually. So was that moment an out-of-body experience? Absolutely. And I think my whole life since then has been an out-of-body experience.
So how did that experience then transform your life to do what you're doing today, which is, and we're going to be talking a lot more about that, which is mind, body, and soul connection. So how did this incident transition to who you are today?
Well, I mean, first of all, you know, it's important to understand that before this happened, the type of person that I was very left brain, very logical. I always wrote a list of things to do. You know, I was a doer. I exercised chronically, and I was consumed by making sure that I didn't gain weight. I was counting my calories. Everything was for you know, just basically trying to maintain my physical weight, and everything had to do with, you know, the way I identified, you know, or the way I defined who I was based on my physical body, right? So I was consumed by my body. I remember eating cereal at night and the next day having to work out for like an extra hour and a half to burn off all my calories.
So it was all about the exterior,
it
not
was totally
the
all about the
internal.
exterior, yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't really know that I was doing it for that, but you know, later on, after, you know, my healing experience, I started to realize that all of it was just a way for me to, you know, have some sort of control in my life. Because at that point when I was hit by a car, and no coincidence, especially because there was 4 accidents within 2 years, I was probably broken in every aspect in my life at that moment. And it was very symbolic, you know, what happened to me physically. And so I had been broken already at that moment, or I had believed I was, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and then at that point physically. It was when I was in the hospital that I found out my parents were divorcing. You know, I grew up in a very abusive environment, but a lot of love at the same time. But just a tough upbringing, but at the same time, a lot of love. And so it was the only way for me to just take control of my life, and I started to turn to just chronic exercise. And it got me a lot of school. I was an overachiever in my academics and athletics. You know, I was always on to something else, and always learning and always, you know, achieving something different, but I wasn't present. The drive and the why of everything, if you asked me at the time, I probably didn't know why. It was subconsciously, I was just kind of keeping busy.
So then you had to go through a huge healing process, right? So when you're going through that journey of the healing process, what was a key discovery for you to shift and change how you're doing things, how you were doing things?
So it was interesting because at first it was just about healing myself physically. I was in pain. I had to rehab, you know, my body. And I was told, you know, the limiting beliefs by doctors that I wouldn't be able to move my arm again and all that stuff. I wouldn't be able to get my arm over my shoulders. So at some point I took it upon myself to start trying to fix my body on my own. I had the background for what I went to school for, and it wasn't until I started, it was about within 2 years of the journey. So the first 2 years, you know, my intention that I was awakened to was I'm just physically fixing my body. I want to get back to working out, I got to burn calories, all these things. But I knew something about me felt different, and I couldn't pinpoint it. But it wasn't until I started to really kept turning back to the pain. So the pain the whole time was my guidance, and using the pain to guide and facilitate how to work on my body, how to fix it. And I mean, today I can do things with my body I could never do even as an athlete. But there was something that happened to me in the process of working with my physical body that allowed me to experience a level of a mind-body connection, and a level of stillness that started to expose to me things that were going on with me that I had no idea were there. There were memories, there were emotions that I was storing, you know, all these fears and all these thoughts that I was storing that I had no idea that I was living by. And I was essentially just living like a robot, not really knowing why I was living. And it wasn't until I made this weird connection. You know, I was stretching, and I was, you know, just catering to my pain, and all of a sudden I had this weird random memory. And I would keep having memories of my childhood, and then sometimes I would feel emotional. And I was like, that's so weird. Why does that happen? And then I'd go on with my day. You know, I never really thought much about it until I came across a book called Anatomy of the Spirit by Carolyn Myss. And basically that book talks about how we store emotions in our bodies and everything. And it's crazy because when I started to read it, at first I thought I was crazy. I wouldn't tell anybody about it. But it wasn't until I read this book that I started to validate what I was already experiencing. And the crazy thing is this was very progressive, and that's the thing, there was no crazy one-time life shift. All I was able to recognize is I'm not the same. I couldn't get a hold of myself. I remember being like, I just am not me anymore, and I don't know how to find her again. And it was very progressive, but it wasn't until all of a sudden I started to notice that when I started to have more of these events happen to me, I started to notice that I would, you know, attract more success in my life. I would notice more beauty in my life. More people were complimenting me. Every aspect of my life was somehow becoming more beautiful. It's almost like the world was seeing me more.
So it was almost unconsciously, consciously, you were reinventing yourself.
Absolutely, but I didn't know I was doing it. There was something else that was taking over the process.
Okay.
But so again, the first 2 years, I was literally just working on my body. I'm in pain. I'm a body person. I'm going to work out, and no matter how much I pushed, I was always in pain. So the pain always made me simplify, to work out less, to really pay attention, to focus on my breath, to put my mind in these areas. And over time, as I started to release these emotions and all these memories started to come, I started to become more aware that I started to feel lighter, and I didn't even know why, because I still didn't make the full connection. And it wasn't until I started to notice how it was responding to life, or how life was responding back to me, that I started to notice that that's really weird. I would walk away from situations and be like, that's weird, that used to upset me. Stuff like that would upset me. Like, how come that didn't upset me? I didn't have to think about being positive. I didn't have to think about being more loving. You know, I didn't coach myself through it and intellectualize how I should be. It just was. And
so you took something that was very difficult, and like an accident, and you mentioned 4 accidents within 2 years, and you used that energy to organically, sounds like it, to transform yourself and to become the person that you are today, which is a better version of yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the mind, body, and soul, that who you are today and how you transform, and some of the key maybe advice that you can give to our viewers about how to take a negative and organically turn it into positive. All right? So we take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Losing weight and feeling fit is a simple 3-point process: diet, exercise, and a weight reduction supplement. VegiSlim by Greenish is a Health Canada approved weight management formula that's effective, safe, vegetarian, and natural to use. Combined with the right diet and exercise plan, VegiSlim will bring you back onto the path of healthy living.
Welcome back. We are here with Rosa Rago. You just saw a video regarding what she does with individuals that helps them through their journey and through their pain to get to a better place. So Rosa, just talk a little bit more about what is it that the viewers just saw in that video.
So ultimately, there's 2 ways that we can approach healing. And we can either coach people through breakthroughs and to help them interrupt patterns, help them to understand, you know, how to do that. Or what we can do is go straight to the source and, you know, allow ourselves to release the energies and the emotions that we have stored in our bodies that are connected to these thoughts. And so what you see me doing with one of my clients is that I'm just working on her body and helping her to release, you know, certain things that she has locked in her that she doesn't even know. And ultimately, you know, allowing us to experience a sense of freedom within our spirit and ourselves.
So how is that different from people that are going to see motivational coach or different kind of life coach or a fitness person? And I know that for what I've seen you done, and I have personally experienced it myself, it seems to be a combination of the 2 of them. So what made you decide that to get somebody to release some of that pain and anger or stress or anxiety, you have to do more of that physicality of a session instead of just a verbal session?
Absolutely. Well, so what is it? How is it different from actual coaching? I think they go hand in hand, because the coaching and the communication allows for a different type of awareness for the person so that they can actually consciously engage on what's happening. And that's more about knowledge, how we access knowledge. There needs to be a conversation, so you kind of coach your clients through it. But ultimately, 90% is what we embody and what we feel.
Okay.
And so we feel through the body. And so if we can take care of removing the noise from our body, it allows the person to experience something different, and that takes care of 90% of our experience. And then you can use the 10% to actually understand the process of what's happening to them. Why do I feel less judgmental? Why do I feel more loving? Why do I, you know, why am I noticing that I'm redirecting meaning in my life in different parts before something used to be a big deal and it wasn't? And why do I feel emotional? And so coaching them through that to help them understand what's happening is that they're actually actually releasing things that they've been holding on to that they didn't even know, so that they can, you know, integrate into their lives. They can be gentle with themselves as they go through that vulnerable period, and then really be more intentional and purposeful on what to create in life with that new space that we have inside of us.
So just maybe a few tidbits to our viewers, if you can, maybe this is your camera. So you talk about the noise. What can someone do at home to remove some of that noise?
Ultimately, be okay with being uncomfortable. You know, we all have access to silence. We can just put ourselves anywhere in a room. We can, you know, go to the bathroom if we have to. We can close our eyes wherever we are, even just right now, close our eyes and allow ourselves to set the intention to actually connect with a stillness within ourselves. And ultimately, when we do that, sometimes we're so estranged to that, and it's been so long since we've done that. We become so uncomfortable that we don't allow ourselves to sit in that discomfort. And so what I would recommend is really at any moment in the day is to take a moment and to close your eyes and to just feel and experience what you're actually feeling inside of you. Not what we're giving off on the outside and try to keep up with, you know, the facade, but really close your eyes and really tune into what am I feeling, and really be present to that. Through breath and without judgment, and just practice self-love in that moment for yourself is, you know, can you be that for yourself? And naturally just watch that unfold and how that becomes just a part of who you are for others.
And so you talk about stillness, take a moment, because it's true though, when you're just sitting still and you close your eyes, it's hard to shut your mind out. Down, right? It's really, really hard. So how can an individual do that? How can you quiet your mind?
Well, the first question I would ask is, just because, you know, I always say this to my students, is like, I understand it's hard, but you still got to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? And like, that's mastery. It takes practice. So it's hard, be with it, but the more you can do it, the more you'll start to identify yourself as something outside the noise.
And how long should you do that for?
You know, it's more so I would set the intention to go for 20 minutes, morning, midday, and night. But if what that looks like
20 minutes per or 20 minutes total?
Per. But what that looks like might be maybe 3 minutes the first day, and then you can't last the 20 minutes, and you don't do the rest of the day. It's just fill in that gap, right? So that you eventually work up to that. Maybe the next week you're doing 5 minutes, you know, morning and night, and then eventually you did 5, you know, and just when you set an intention, you're likely going to do it. It's not going to look exactly the way you intend to in the beginning, but eventually things starts to settle in and start to fit in, and you start to look around you and realize, wow, this started with the intention.
So some people are going to say, what, 20 minutes? That's a long time.
For
but
those, yeah.
Just don't go on social media, guys. Do not go on social media. If you don't go on social media, there is your 20 minutes.
Well, you know what? It's funny you say that, because it has to be mindful.
Okay.
And so, you know, 20 minutes, not talking to other people or not going to social media, you don't realize what's going on. 90 to 95% of our mind is on. Even right now as we're talking to each other, there's so much more going on in our worlds, right? Yeah. And it's just really being able to be in tune with that, so that we can be connected to that while we're going, you know, navigating through life and experiencing things. So it's really about closing our eyes, stopping everything around you, not just not being on social media, but actually tuning in to the point where after the experience, you can express to someone what it was like.
But I was thinking some people would say, you know what, where am I going to get 20 minutes 3 times a day?
Yeah.
So my advice is that don't go on social media. So instead of going on social media, take that 20 minutes
for yourself. Got it, okay.
The time, take that 20 minutes for yourself to quiet down your mind.
Yes.
Right?
Then I would start maybe with 5 minutes, but it's the loud part of us that believes that we don't have the time. Because the more we quiet ourselves, the more we realize that we have so much time, and to go on social media too. Yes.
So what would be another thing? So the first thing is to quiet down your mind, right? I know it's going to be very difficult, like you said, start with 3 minutes and increments every day. What would be the second piece of advice?
So the second piece of advice is to trust that the only truth is love. And what I mean by that is that if we can trust in that truth, then we can trust that anything that's not that is probably a temporary illusion, that we're not able to see the truth and access it because we're maybe loud. And just allowing ourselves to set the intention to be as kind as possible to people, and to be as kind as possible to ourselves, and just set the intention to just not to create more noise during the time that we're trying to bring ourselves down to that stillness.
So Rosa, here's the reality. We're human. Okay, I know you always talk about coming from a place of love, but sometimes, you know, we're coming from a place of anger, resentment, frustration. How do we reset? How do we reset? Because I hear you. Coming from a place of love is the way to do it, right? But I think it takes practice, because as human beings, we have so many emotions throughout the day. How do we constantly reset and come with that place of love?
So, I mean, first of all, it's how do we define love? So I didn't say anything about love being pretty. Love is honest too. And so, and love, you know, love is being able to recognize that we're imperfect and to be okay with it and to accept. And so, listen, I'm half Sicilian. I have anger in me, and I have the ability to get angry. But the part of me that loves myself is the part of me that forgives myself and recognizes that I'm human, and as humans we suffer, right? We're experiencing relationships and we're experiencing life. And so there is a period where we are emotionally reactive. And really what love looks like is being able to watch ourselves being perfect. Then at some point being able to respond in a way where we can be kind to ourselves and recognize that we're only just suffering. And then to just allow ourselves to feel safe in just being raw with what we're feeling that moment. And once we can accept that, we'll find our anger leaving, and then forgiving ourselves, and then doing that for other people. Because what actually keeps us in the anger and the emotion is the part of us that won't accept that that's okay. If we can accept that it's okay to be imperfect, then there's going to be perfection in love, even in the time when there's anger, right? But it's how are we identifying ourselves? Are you the anger, or are you going to be the love towards the anger that needs that love? And so it all depends on what perspective and what plane you're allowing yourself to see it from, right?
So while you're making sure that your mind is still quiet, also try to kind of accept who you are and try to be coming from a place of love.
Totally.
And I think it's practice.
Yes, totally. And here's the thing, it's practice, and with practice you start to realize that, you know, it's ultimately just an intention to give you some sort of direction, because at some point we're going to recognize our power to choose. And if we're not in that place of recognizing that, we're going to be in a reactionary period where we're angry. But at some point we will awaken and be like, wait a minute.
That's right.
I can choose to be different right now, even though it's been 10 days I've been angry, or 5 years, or 15 years.
Or 20 years.
Or 20 years. Oh my gosh, I've been angry for 20 years. But you know what? Right now, I recognize my power to choose. I'm going to do tip 2 that Rosa gave me. I'm going to set the intention to be love right now. First to myself, for forgiving myself for all the sabotage for being angry. And then, man, I'm going to be that for other people, because as soon as I gave myself that forgiveness, it felt so good and freeing. I want everyone to feel that way. And that way we can just, you know, be easy on each other.
And for those of you, for the viewers, we're going to have the website of Rosa at the end of the credits, so you will be able to go check out her website, and there's a lot of different podcasts that you can sign up for, and it talks a lot more in details about what she's been talking about. So we're going to play a quick video about the RISE. Is it the RISE?
So my intuitive movement and guidance program, and it's just a 2 times a week class that I take my students on, and it's actually putting them through the practice to help them further understand this. So
excellent. Let's play this quick video and a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Does your life feel like a cycle? Replaying itself over and over again? Are you looking for something but not quite sure what that something is? Do you need clarity? Do you need direction? Then it's time to rise. Where we choose to take control of our lives by accepting full responsibility for where we are today. Where we act out of integrity by showing ourselves that we can set an intention and follow through to completion. Where we love ourselves in the process of the journey, especially when it becomes most challenging. So that we are constantly growing and evolving into our best selves. Creating a life towards greater love, greater joy, greater peace.
Welcome back. We are here with Rosa Rago, and we just saw the RISE video. Rosa, tell me what is RISE video.
So it's all about really the RISE philosophy. And
Okay.
ultimately, RISE, R-I-S-E, okay? So R stands for responsibility. And ultimately, it's about that, you know, self-love and loving ourselves is actually a responsibility because it allows us to, you know, love others properly and to not add to, you know, the natural chaos that we need to go through our lives anyways. I stands for, you know, integrity. And, you know, setting an intention and following through with integrity as well. And S for self-love, doing, you know, going through the whole process, even when it's hard, with the intention to love. And E for education is to constantly keep ourselves educated, because education is empowerment and it keeps us more informed to make, you know, wiser choices in life.
So for our viewers out there that's looking for more information regarding what you do, where can they go?
They can check out the website. It's actually at iamrosarago.com. And so if you check out, you can, you know, also check out my podcast, my Rise with Rosa podcast. I have my services and my classes and a bunch of new programs coming out on an online platform.
So there's a lot of different classes and courses and self-improvement out there. What differentiates what you do from the other ones? What's the value add for I Am Rosa Rago?
That's an awesome question. One thing that I know that based on feedback is that it's allowed, you know, people, the difference has been that it's from knowledge to wisdom and true experience. And, you know, there's a, you know, we all know what we need to do. And we all know how we need to be. We all know there's nothing more that we would
But
need
we
to
make
know.
excuses, and also remember, we play the victim. It's
Yes.
not our fault. It's that person did
Yes.
this, or I don't have this job, or I don't have this
Yes.
house, or I haven't lost the weight. There's always excuses,
Yes,
right?
and there's a way to coach people through those excuses. But even then, it's constantly this inner battle of us then trying to be better. So it's still an internal dialogue. And ultimately what's different is that it allows people to truly experience and embody that person. We're more grounded within who we are, that there's no internal, you know, dispute. It just is. At some point you recognize that you don't realize you're being you until you are you. And you're like, huh, that was easy, rather than constantly trying. And so ultimately the body work and really working with the body removes these patterns that in the absence of these patterns, you are who you are.
So how you coach individuals is through those body movement from
Yes.
one of the videos that we saw earlier, right? And in addition to that, I'm taking, there's also some one-on-one coaching that takes place.
Yes, so in the classes I teach how to connect to their own bodies so that they're more empowered to do this at home. And but I do offer one-on-one sessions, and this is where I truly, you know, harness the gift through my car accident. You know, I started to connect to visions and started to connect to, you know, certain things as I was working with the body as a personal trainer, and it just evolved into a, you know, a body intuitive healing. And ultimately in this next video is what I'm doing is I'm doing a session, an intuitive session on my client and my friend Sarah.
How long does it take? Like, how long before somebody starts seeing some results?
Well, they'll experience it instantaneously after the
Okay.
session where there's something that just feels good.
Okay.
But it's too simple, right? So it's like, oh, it feels good, and we just leave, but we don't stop to recognize that that's what the answer is that feeling that you experience where it just, you feel within yourself, you feel less chaotic, and then replicating that experience over and over again, and then teaching them how to replicate that for themselves until it becomes a way of being, ultimately. And so the experience is powerful, but it's over a period of time. And so what I really try to do is not try to, you know, change someone's life in the moment, but show them a level of consistency within a practice and, you know, how you can really benefit when you're really sincere about wanting a result for something. And so for those people who are truly looking for transformation and really want to find who they are, who are sincere about that journey, the reality is that it's a practice that you need to consistently stick to. And sometimes it's hard in this life that you need a community or a tribe or people who have done it to get you to stick to it. And
Yeah,
so,
because how do you create awareness? Because a lot of people are not really aware of their perception or even accept their reality, right? And that's the truth of a lot of individuals. So point number one from what I just hear is that you need to want to transform, right?
you need to want to. And if you don't want to, it's probably because you don't believe. And so ultimately, I've had people come to see me where they believed and wanted enough to just show up to the session. But I asked them to do it on their own, they couldn't. And the reality is that we all go through different phases in life, and there's going to be a time where we're so low that no matter how much we want change, we've lost our faith. And that we have, you know, completely
limiting ourselves.
Yeah, we've completely lost any hope.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is where, depending on where we are on our journey, sometimes, you know, we just need to allow ourselves to receive love, because there are people out there who are actually, you know, lending out a hand and recognize that it's not easy. And so I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying that the practice is simple. And it's the complexity of our minds that doesn't want to accept that. And I'm okay to hold someone's hand until they have enough of a profound experience to show them the little steps. There's no secret potion. It's just about really having a relationship with yourself and finding joy in that process.
So it's not a quick fix. And also, as human beings, we're constantly limiting ourselves. And I'll tell you one of my story. In the summer, I needed to jump off a cliff with a friend of mine. Said, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. She did it. And then all of a sudden, I felt paralyzed and I couldn't jump. And at that moment, I realized I was limiting myself. So I had to push. I'm not going to lie to you. I really had to push through. And I did jump.
Yes.
But the moment that I did that jump, I felt refreshed, exhilarated.
Of course.
Because now I've expanded that limitations.
Absolutely.
And I think at the end of the day, what that made me think of is that on a daily basis, every day, all the time, we're constantly setting limits for ourselves.
Yes.
All living in the same little bubble that we're aware of. So what you do, your services, is to help that individual grow. And I really like how you say, you know, always coming from a place of love. I think that sometimes is difficult, but it's also, you said, authentic love or true love.
Yes, of course, because love sometimes is holding someone accountable to not being, you know, it's ultimately about recognizing that, you know, after I got hit by a car and I almost died, I awakened to who I was. And who I am is love, and I stand for love. And it becomes a responsibility to stand for everybody else, to remind them of who they are. And that's ultimately the only truth. And so it's important to recognize that if I'm going to stand for love and remind you of who you are, I might still rub you the wrong way if you haven't accepted the love within yourself. It's just how it goes. And so ultimately, you know, it's just understanding that love doesn't always look pretty.
So I have to tell the viewers this little story. So Rosa doesn't live too far from where I live, 8 minutes away. So I was supposed to go see her on a Wednesday, but I was super tired. I'm like, no, I really don't want to go. I was still in my pajamas. She said, you know what, I'm going to come by and see you. She came by and she brought tea. You brought tea for me.
Yes.
And I thought that was really, really, and that's love.
Yes.
That was super nice. So just dropped by my house and just gave me a tea and gave me a nice hug and love, and then went up. And that made me feel really good.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for the acknowledgement.
Yeah, because for me, I just want to recognize that, because that's, I guess that's what you do. At the end of the day, you are 100% there for somebody who's looking at transformation, who's looking at helping themselves reinvent themselves and become the better version of themselves.
Of course, and I'm 100% committed to reflecting that back to them until they see it. And yeah, ultimately that's what it's all about, right? And that's, if we can do that for each other. There's been times I needed someone to stand for me. Okay. And I really appreciated it. So
you gave 2 tidbits. The first one was take a moment. Start with 3 minutes 3 times a day. The second one was self-love. So what's your third one before we end the show?
So the third tip that I would probably give is to stop focusing on ourselves. And I know that sounds contradictory because I'm saying to love yourself. But just recognize that, you know, if you can stop focusing on making it about yourself and recognize that we're all the same and we're all going through the same thing in a different way, and we can start making it more about, you know, service, there's something that will shift in the way you respond to life and the way that you see life that will improve the quality of your life. Absolutely.
Wow. Well, there you have it. Rosa, thank you so much for coming today. It was a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to our sessions on Wednesdays. Hopefully in a few months we can give a progress about how things are going, because I think there's room for everybody to improve, to transform, to be a better person. So thank you so much. Appreciate it. And at the end of the show here, folks, we're going to give you the information of Rosa, how to get in touch with her, as well as check out her website. I am Rosa Rago. I want to say a special thank you to my fashion stylist, Susie Tomasi. Her website is susieqjewels.com, and a portion of her proceeds goes to the Women's Shelter. And one my wonderful makeup artist, Mindy Baji. Please follow me on Instagram and check out my website, nadira.ca, and subscribe to TAC TV. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Until next time.